What's good, y'all? Fuzion here, back with another reaction video. Adam Silver pulled up the first take. There's a lot going on in this video. I'm trying to see what I really want to talk about. I don't really care about the audience discussion. I really want to talk about this new player participation policy. About not really sitting players for load management or whatever. And I'm probably going to do a part 2 to this video because I do also want to touch on the player involvement in media. And I think I would want to touch a little bit on the WNBA. I really wonder what he has to say about that, because I do feel like that over these past few years, the NBA has definitely been doing better with propping up the WNBA. Right now, the finals is going on. The Aces versus Liberty. I'm from Vegas, so I rock with the Aces. And I, enjoy watching them play. Like, you get to see them play and all that type of stuff. So, that may be something that I will talk about as well. But, new player participation policy. I have done a video on this. I will go ahead and link it in the description down below as well. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started.
Speak to that for a second in terms of the player participation policy, the reason you felt the need for it, and how you think it's going to work.
Absolutely. And in fairness to our players, it was as much a team issue as a player issue. And I understand it. I think in the day and age of analytics, teams, and we're seeing this in all sports, they become laser-like focused on the ultimate prize, which is winning the championship. And then they're willing to sacrifice, in essence, in some cases, fan interest during the regular season, because at least from their standpoint, they had data that was showing them that if they rested players tactically, strategically at certain games, they would be better off. I think we're hearing loud and clearly from our fans, the media as a proxy for the fans, that people are disappointed. I mean, I put aside those terrible stories of a family going to the game.
All right, so here is the player participation policy. I'll go ahead and I'll just read it. Gives league authority to fine teams for resting star players, all-star or all-NBA in any of the last 3 seasons. Star players must be available for nationally televised and in-season tournament games. Exceptions for players 35 or older or with heavy career workloads. So just from that little synopsis there, I think I agree. And let me tell you why I think I agree. I actually do want to start at the bottom real quick. I do think if you work harder and are the primary scorer, primary ball handler, primary defender, someone who is doing a lot of the work, or over 35, I do think it makes sense for you to get some sort of rest for that work that you put in. I do think that is fair. It's almost like a vacation day type of system. Since this is their job, I don't really mind the vacation days. I do think that it is fair because of the star players must be available for televised and in-season tournament games. They will be only missing games that, may not be seen by everyone. Of course, it'll suck for that, like that age-old story about the kid who was wanting to see, their favorite player, that type of, same crybaby bullshit that they always push. And, I get it to a certain extent, but they're out there for them. At the end of the day, they're out there because that is a job. And like every other job, you get vacation time. The key games are key for a reason, and nationally televised for a reason, because these are players and teams that everybody cares about. Everybody wants to see. So of course you will have your stars. Of course it makes sense for them to have stars needing to be playing. during those times. So that's, like the money makers, as well as the in-season tournament. This will be the first in-season tournament of the year, ever. Not of the year, ever. So, of course, I do think it's important for them to put their best foot forward with that. And that does include playing players who, playing all their star players. Now, that being said, I'm wondering how that works with the All-Star or All-NBA. Because I do believe that there are some All-NBA players that I don't think would be considered star players. I think Sabonis was All-NBA. He's a great player. I do think that he fits under that star mold, but I do think that there are players that are like below him, and I think he is like a perfect example of all NBA star player, but anyone under him that may be sort of, I don't even know how to like describe it. I do think that he is a star player, but I also know that there are other people who are around his skill level that could be better or could be worse. So is that the only way that we are going to describe it? Is All-Star or All-NBA in the last 3 seasons going to be the main priority when it comes to finding, if that makes sense? I don't think that really did make sense. Here's another example. Tyler Hero. I don't believe he was an All-NBA player in the last 3 years. Last 3 seasons. Can someone fact check that for me? But I believe he would be considered a star player for the for the Heat. I believe that people want to come see him play as well. That being said, he is very important to the Heat team, and because of that, he wouldn't fall under the star player, so he could rest. Those are the type of players that will slip through the cracks. I think Russ has been in the All-Star the last 3 seasons, but that's another example. If Russ hasn't been, and again, please fact check me, would he be considered a star player? Chris Paul, another example. I don't know if he again, you guys can fact check me on this because I'm not 100% sure. I do think that he does reach that 35 or older, but a player like Chris Paul, who I don't think has been an All-Star or in the All-NBA in the last 3 seasons, but people care about him and want to see him play because there are people who consider him as their favorite player. Would he fall under that also? So I'm wondering exactly how much leniency or how flexible that first rule is, because I think it could be perceived differently if, let's say, that they are sitting Chris Paul a game or having him rest, or Draymond Green, he doesn't count. Klay Thompson, he's on the decline, but I could see him also being in that range where the flexibility of someone like a Klay Thompson, who has been a All-Star or in the All-NBA but was injured or whatever, and sort of didn't keep his level at that level. Could he sit? And I think that is where like the issue will lie. Just a thought. And of course, I'm just talking. I'm more so just trying to throw that out there to see what you guys think as well.
But I think even in terms of where it really scales, from a media standpoint, if we expect people to care about a regular season, our players and our teams have to be fully invested in being out there. And as Joe Dumars, our head of basketball operations, has said, we've got to reinforce the fact we're an 82-game league. You can almost say it, 82-game league, and the expectation is that if players are healthy, they will play. And as I said, that's not just directed to our players, it's directed at our teams, our general managers. Everyone in the organization has to understand that this is a fan-first business, that particularly because of some of the media changes we talked about, that we're moving less away from sort of a bundle environment where you just pay one price and you get everything. This notion that I'm only going to pay for what I want. And so it's also a response to the marketplace, a realization that in order to keep our business going, we have to constantly be putting our best foot forward. And that's where the notion of a play-in tournament came from. I'm sure the in-season tournament we'll talk about, which is new this season. Just things to create more excitement throughout the regular season. But as you said, I think sometimes there's a notion that something's very broken. I don't agree with that at all. As you started with the data on what we're seeing in terms of attendance, all-time record attendance. So the fans are also telling us they love this product, the coverage we have around the clock. I think this is more a little bit around the edges because by all means, and again, going back to Joe Dumars, during his day, he'll tell stories. A lot of players you and I know well, former players, played when they shouldn't have been playing. And there's no attempt here to turn the clock back. We're not looking for guys to play through injuries. We're just looking for guys to recognize that, we got to be focused on the fans, and that if you're healthy, maybe a little bit banged up, the expectation is.
I'm glad he did say that. A little bit banged up. I think that could mean a sprained finger or something that's a minor injury that you can play with. I played with a sprained ankle before. I think that would be considered something where that you would have to sit at least a week or so. But anyone who has played basketball has sprained their ankle and has tried to continue to play. It's not fun. That shit hurts. But if you are the star player, if you are someone who has a heavy workload for your team, they're going to need you out there. So you could probably rest 1 or 2 games, 1 or 2 days, usually a sprained ankle. Right when it happens, you're not really feeling it until the next day. And then those next 2 or 3 days, you're trying to baby it. But if you're in the middle of a crazy schedule where you're facing 4 teams that you have to beat so you can make it to the playoffs, you're going to have to make that decision. And again, I'm glad he did say that about the banging up, because I do feel like a lot of players, at least from what I've heard, I'm not an expert. I don't talk to any of the NBA guys. I mean, we have 561 subscribers, bro. I don't think that anyone from the NBA is in contact with us, so I don't have any insider info. But that being said, bro, these are peak athletes, professional athletes who have been playing this game. Most of them have been playing this game all of their lives. So I'm sure that they can play through a sprained ankle after 1 or 2 days rest if it comes down to it. I don't think some of them have. I do think over these past few years, I don't want to say that it's been getting soft, but I think that there has been an emphasis on safety, which again is also important. But again, you're missing games because of a little sprain on your ankle after your rest, or a finger that was sprained, or some other small injury, a cut on your arm or some shit. And of course I'm being slightly facetious, but I do think that if you are a little bit banged up and that you can play through it, then I think you should be able to play through it. I think you should get a little bit of rest or whatever, maybe go half speed in practice, or take a day off of practice and then come back and go half speed, and then at least be out there for 30 minutes, 25 minutes. That should always be an option.
You'll play even, and I think this gets a little bit confused too. There's what Joe Dumars has out been saying recently. It's sort of the headline is load management doesn't work. I think what we've learned is it doesn't necessarily work in terms of injury prevention, but there's no question that if you're playing in the second game of a back-to-back, there's diminished performance to a certain degree, to the extent guys are tired, or they've been playing multiple games on the road. Their performance will dip a little bit, but it's still the expectation that if you're not going to hurt yourself, you got to be out there.
What about the player, whether directly or indirectly, that looks at it and says, it's being perceived as if it's our fault. I know you just alluded to it.
Yeah, because it
It's
is.
your fault. You're not the
Man, it is your fault. If you are not hurt, if you are perfectly fine and you're just sleepy and you just choose not to play, the people we are talking about are superstars. They have pool on their team. They get like consulted about trades. They get consulted about new coaches. They get consulted about firing coaches. If you can fire a coach, then you can tell a coach that you want to play. And they will honor that. So I do think let me rephrase. I don't think it's all on the players, but I do think that there is a good amount of it if you are perfectly fine and you just say, and they're just like, hey, you're resting. You can be like, actually, I'm good. I want to play. They're going to honor that. If you have the pull like you think you do, then you can say, hey, I'm playing. You cannot tell me I'm not playing. I'm playing. Then they will honor that. So I do think it's multiple people's issue, but I do think that the players do have a voice, especially like the players that we are talking about.
directing it at just the players. You're directing it at the teams, because covering the league, you know, team doctors, the guys in the analytics department, they collaborate with one another. They may come to the conclusion that a player may not need to play. They may make that decision for the player, and the player has to capitulate to whatever they suggest, and the players are taking the heat for it. You had a lot of people out there, particularly with Kawhi Leonard along with others, they sort of gave the impression they were taking heat that was undeserved. What do you say to the players? What do you say to the public about the players when it comes to that?
I say that we have this incredible partnership with the Players Association. Tamika Tremalio is the executive director, CJ McCollum now as the president. And when we came together in collective bargaining and to talk about this issue, there wasn't a lot of dissent in the room. You know, we agreed to the 65-game minimum. That's sort of a separate issue in terms of being eligible for awards, but I hope nobody thinks that means there's an expectation guys will only play 65 games. That takes into account injuries, sometimes long, multiple game injuries throughout the season. So we landed on that. But again, within the room, I think there was a consensus that this is a joint issue, called, the team league, team player issue, and that there's a little bit of fault for everybody. I would say there are some cases, I think, particularly with younger players, it's less about a veteran player issue, where to the extent they come into the league and it seems to be the norm, that the expectation isn't that we have an 82 game season. I think we had to reset there. Mm-hmm. But again, I say more directly, we're not saying this is a player only issue. We're saying that for the entire league, we all need to come together. And again, as Joe Dumars says, we are an 82-game league.
The WNBA has a finals going on. I'm looking.
But yeah, so that's pretty much all. That was sort of a weird cut. I do feel like he said something that wasn't supposed to be said. So they just cut right over it. But, so what you guys think? I think that this is an interesting conversation. And I think it's going to change a lot of how, the next season will, play. Again, here are the participation rules. Just like I stated earlier, I agree with a lot of these rules to a certain extent. I can see that first rule being bent a little bit. I could see, hopefully, but we know people. So I could see people taking advantage of that. Just my thoughts on that. But that's everything. If this gets 5 likes, I'll go ahead and drop part 2 here about the player involvement in media. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.